Welcome to the Wind Up with Will. I'm your host, Will here, and it's been a few weeks coming. Finally got another video out. So today I'm going to talk about some recent sports news. I'm going to start out with Major League Soccer, something that's growing in popularity here in the States. MLS Cup was back on November 9th, I believe, or December 9th, I'm sorry. December 9th, just this past week, actually, or yeah, last weekend. Yeah, time has flown by. Columbus beat the Columbus Crew beat LAFC 2-1 in the MLS Cup final. Columbus Crew clinches their third MLS Cup. They had goals scored by Cucho Hernandez and Yaboa. I hope I pronounced those names correctly. And Dennis Buunga scored for LAFC. Yeah, Columbus just finds a way to. They're the St. Louis Cardinals of MLS. They just get in the playoffs and find a way to win occasionally. But they won. They won. So I want to go into the NFL as well. Well, before the NFL, I forgot to mention this. Major League Baseball. Some breaking news in that. It'd be kind of hard to miss this if you didn't already see it. But Shohei Ohtani, the greatest athlete in the world right now, the pitcher slash DH for the Los Angeles Angels. He's a free agent. He just signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the crosstown rivals, for 10 years for $700 million. So if you do the math, that's $70 million a year. Now he set up the deal, or the Dodgers set up the deal with him where they defer majority of that money until after the 10 years. So he will be getting paid $2 million a year for 10 years. And then once those 10 years are up, they'll pay him the rest of the $700 million, which is after the 10 years, they really owe him $680 million. And at that time, he can move to a different state and not have the income tax on it, which is a brilliant move by him to save money because the California income tax is pretty high. But that is the largest sports contract in North America. It might even be the world, I would think. I don't know of anyone else getting paid anything like that. And on top of that, he's getting paid sponsorships and everything, of course. So he will not be hurting for money. That's obvious. Big signing there for the Dodgers, and they will easily make that money back if they can win a World Series or two. And with all of the jersey and merchandise sales they're going to get by having signed Shohei. And they've also just traded for Tyler Glasnow from the Tampa Bay Rays, and I believe they signed him to like a 4-year, $100 million deal, which is a lot of money for a guy that has struggled to stay on the field over the last few years as a pitcher. But if you're the Dodgers, money grows on trees. So that's what's going on there. My Mets signed a manager, I believe it's Carlos Mendoza, was his name. Bench coach for the Yankees. That actually happened back in November. But I'm not a real fan of the signing. If we couldn't get Craig Counsell, we might as well have kept Buck Showalter. That's just how I feel about it. It was disappointing that we lost Buck Showalter. We signed Luis Severino, former pitcher of the Yankees, for a 1-year deal, which is not bad. I'm trying to find. Okay, yeah. So we signed. The Mets have Carlos Mendoza, the former Yankees bench coach, now as our manager. Not a fan of the move. It's why I didn't want the Mets to sign Joe Girardi a couple years ago. Is Yankees didn't want him anymore, so why should we want him? This is a little different because he was the bench coach, so he's just moving up a station. So if the Yankees didn't want him anymore, but still, I kind of feel like that's just like, well, we're not as good as the Yankees, so we should get similar for them. So I'm not a huge fan. I mean, if I would have rather had Craig Counsell, and if we couldn't get him, which anyway, I would have rather just kept Buck Showalter, who I think is a good manager. But we got John Gibbons as our bench coach, former Blue Jays manager now. sorry, the way I worded that, John Gibbons, who used to be the Blue Jays manager, is now the Mets bench coach. Some moves being made in the MLB world. Juan Soto of the Padres got traded to the Yankees in a big deal. That's going to drastically improve the Yankees lineup, which very much needs help because the past couple of years it looks like Aaron Judge is the only guy playing on that team. They have no offense outside of him. That's why they missed the playoffs this past year. They just could not have. They just cannot generate runs. They couldn't score. And when you can't score, you struggle to win some games. As a Mets fan, I know that. Yeah, but that's all I got for MLB at the time. Well, I didn't even think about it. Yeah, they did have the MLB awards recently, so I could pull up. I'll do a future video for the MLB awards and the All MLB team. So I'm meaning for this to be a shorter video. But I'll get into those in my next video. And I also still need to do my NBA predictions, which I very much will get to, but not today. Probably be the end of the year by the time I get that video out. It'll be like the end of the NBA season, but I will get it out, I promise, and hopefully soon. So I'll move on to the NFL now. So last week, my Cowboys and Titans both had massive wins. Cowboys had a massive win over the Eagles last week to get back into the division race and have a chance to perhaps win the division and get a top 2 seed, get some home field advantage in the playoffs. And if the Cowboys get home field advantage, they're going to be a very dangerous team. They're 7-0 at home. They're the only team still undefeated at home. After the other team, the Titans, beat Miami on Monday night in Miami, which was a miracle win. I'll touch on the Cowboys, though, first. Them beating the Eagles gets them back in the division race. They really need to win the division to have home field advantage. They're a much different team at home than they are on the road. If they can get home field advantage through at least a couple rounds of the playoffs, they've got a shot at making the Super Bowl. It would be great if they could get the overall 1 seed, but that took a little bit of a blow today with them losing at the Bills in blowout fashion. Cowboys are a different team on the road, and they've struggled against teams that are actually good teams, getting blown out at San Francisco and at Buffalo. I still think the Cowboys are a legitimate team. They're a good team. They have a shot at perhaps getting the Super Bowl, but they need to win the division over the Eagles, because if they play on the road, they're going to play the NFC South winner first. If we end up being the top wild card, which we should win, but after that, you're probably playing 49ers again. You're either going to play the 49ers or the Eagles. So you really want to win the division and get a home game there. Moving on to the Titans last week, they beat Miami in Miami on Monday night. They were down 14 points with like under 4 minutes to go and scored a touchdown, got a punt, went down the field again, scored another touchdown, got a 2-point conversion in there as well, and then stopped Miami on a 4th down. I was at a friend's house who's a big Dolphins fan, and he was so happy with a few minutes to go. And then the Titans had that miracle comeback, and all of the rest of us at his house are just jumping up and down with joy that the Titans, and also surprised that the Titans did it. But it was a fun game. It was a great win for the Titans. That's the game of the year for the Titans. Get kind of a feel-good moment on what has been a bad season. Lost today wearing the Oilers throwback uniforms against Houston Texans, which is unfortunate. It was a very ugly game. Titans were ahead 13 to, I believe, 3 at one point, and it just fell apart. The offense couldn't get anything in the second half. We couldn't run the ball. The offensive line looked horrible, and the defense struggled to stop the Texans from just running it down the Titans' throats. I will say, though, something that is a little annoying that I've seen is the people on social media that just, especially I saw J.J. Watt tweeting it, well, the Texans should get to wear the Oilers uniforms now. And I know it's just somewhat of a joke because they beat us while we were wearing the Oilers uniforms. But here's the thing. There was a team called the Houston Oilers. They relocated to Tennessee and were the Tennessee Oilers and then changed their name to the Tennessee Titans. They're the same franchise. They are the same franchise. They did all of that, moving from Houston to Tennessee, being the Oilers in Tennessee, then to the Titans, before the Texans were even a franchise. They're the same franchise. The Titans and Oilers are the same franchise. The Texans are a completely new team that came into existence in 2002 to just give Houston another team since they lost their original team. It's not the same franchise. I know some people, for whatever reason, have trouble understanding that, but they're not the same franchise. The Titans are the Oilers. They get to wear the Oilers uniforms. Just because the Texans play in Houston does not mean that they get to wear the uniforms of the previous team. That's not how this works. I could make a whole video off of franchises relocating and name changes. Maybe that's a future video idea. I'll get off my soapbox. It's just annoying to see that because they're the same franchise. Titans and Oilers are the same franchise. Texans have no right to the Oilers uniforms. They are a completely different team. It's hilarious to think otherwise. But I do understand some of the Houston's fans' frustrations because the Oilers were their team and they left. So I do understand that there was some frustration there, but pump the brakes a little bit. The Dolphins having lost to the Titans, that hurts them a little bit at getting the 1 seed in the AFC. I think it's going to come down to them at Baltimore for being the number 1 seed in the AFC. I kind of think Baltimore is going to win it, but Miami could. Miami's a good team. That was just kind of a road bump in the way with the Titans. I kind of think they overlooked the Titans a little bit. Last week on Monday night, they were like a 13 or 14 point favorite. I think they just kind of overlooked them and thought it would be an easy win. Titans were able to kind of hang in it. And really, most of the Dolphins' points came from miscues by the Titans. 2 really bad turnovers, a muffed punt, and a fumble by Will Levis that was on a pitch play to Henry. But I think the Dolphins are still a good team. I think them and Baltimore are the 2 favorites in the AFC. And in the NFC, I think it's between Philly and San Francisco, as well as Dallas. Dallas kind of takes a little bit of a blow in that today to loss to Buffalo, but they're just as good as Philly is. So it kind of makes it seem like San Francisco is the top dog in the NFC. They're the number 1 seed currently. They beat Philly and Dallas. So it would be kind of hard to say they're not the favorite, but on the right day, right conditions, maybe Philly or Dallas could beat them. I'm hoping Dallas can if we get to play them in the playoffs again, because I would hate to lose 3 years in a row in the playoffs to them. What else? Oh, the Titans today was just a very bad game for the Titans. Miscues. There was some bad penalties. There was some no called penalties. The referees were just horrible, and then on top of that, the inability for Titans to generate offense, and the defense struggled at times to stop the run. Kind of the same thing in the Cowboys game. There was a few bad calls or no calls. Really, more it was calls. There were several penalties, like the one where it was like targeting or unnecessary roughness when it was a ball thrown slightly high and the defender's trying to time it and he hits a wide receiver that's not catching a ball at all. And then the roughing the punter penalty, like, I guess technically that's a penalty where he jumped into the punter, but he's trying to block the ball and he didn't hit the punter's leg. He just kind of ran into him a bit, which I would think would just be running into the kicker, which is a 5-yard penalty. But the Cowboys just gave the Bills free points today in that game. And the offense did not move the ball at all until like the last 4 minutes when it wasn't a game anymore. So both of my teams need to get some stuff worked out. Will Levis might be injured for the Titans as well, so that's something to keep a lookout for. Um, but there's been a lot of talk recently of Dak Prescott for the Cowboys being in the MVP conversation, and while his stats are very good, I don't see him winning the MVP. I don't think he should. Um, I think there's better players. I personally would vote for someone like Christian McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill, who've had amazing years. Tyreek Hill's on pace to have over 2,000 receiving yards. He has had an ankle injury recently, so we'll see if he gets there. Christian McCaffrey has 20 touchdowns on the year. I know Raheem Mostert has the same, but he's a kind of a different player than Christian McCaffrey. Raheem Mostert is on the Dolphins and is kind of like their big running back that, like, in moments of goal, when they get in the goal line, they're going to give it to him, or when they get in the red zone, they're going to give it to him and try and punch one in. So that's part of the reason he has so many touchdowns. Where Christian McCaffrey is, and don't get me wrong, the 49ers have weapons everywhere with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and since I said that, I want to apologize for calling him Benjamin Ayuk in my NFL preseason predictions video. That is something I realized and just now thought of. I got the name correct now. It's Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy's a good quarterback. They've got a good defense. The 49ers have a lot of great, and George Kittle, they've got a lot of great players. But Christian McCaffrey, really since going to being traded to the 49ers last year, has been a massive game changer for them, giving them a good running back, a good pass-catching running back. He is, and like I said, he has 20 touchdowns on the year. That's rushing and receiving combined. That's a massive part of their offense. And what he's doing as a running back and receiving, I think personally, not that I think, I would vote for him for MVP if I had a vote. But concerning this is the NFL and it's a passing league, and this isn't college football and voting on for the Heisman, it's going to go to a quarterback more than likely. And a lot of people think it should be Dak, but after his performance today, that might take a bit of a hit. Where Brock Purdy had a really good day, and actually I think Brock Purdy's leading in like almost every passing stat. I think touchdown to interception ratio, he leads, completion percentage, yards, touchdowns, might be quarterback rating as well. He leads in a lot of passing stats. So some people are arguing for him to be MVP. Tua's in the conversation as well, had a great year for the Dolphins. I've heard some people say Lamar Jackson, but his stats aren't as good as some of the other quarterbacks. Josh Allen could be in the conversation if the Bills continue to win and manage to make the playoffs. And he also has he has the most combined touchdowns among quarterbacks of passing and rushing. With, I believe, after today, he would have 37 total touchdowns. He has 11 rush touchdowns and 26 pass touchdowns. That's really good for a quarterback. If he continues the season he's having, he's going to have a similar season to what Lamar Jackson had when he won MVP. So the MVP is kind of wide open in the NFL. But I would say if I was a betting man, I would maybe pick Brock Purdy. I kind of feel like he's in the conversation just because he's a quarterback and he's on the 49ers, who seem to be the best team at the moment. But I wouldn't. I think Josh Allen could get back into it. Dak Prescott's still in the conversation, even though I don't think that he's as good as some of those other guys, and he's playing on a loaded team, and they tend to throw a lot, especially against bad teams. So I think his stats are a little inflated, but his stats are good. So, I mean, the voters might still pick him, even though I wouldn't vote for him. But Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill deserve to be in the conversation, especially Christian McCaffrey. He's got 20 touchdowns on the year, and it's such a special part of the 49ers team. I would like to think that he's at least in the conversation. If not, they need to change how they vote or something, because when Derrick Henry had 2,000 rush yards, he was not even considered for MVP, which was a shame. And we might see something similar again this year where we have Tyreek Hill have our 2,000 receiving yards and Christian McCaffrey have like 25, 26 total touchdowns and not be considered at all for MVP, which is a shame. Because those are very special stats coming from skill players, and it's a very pass-heavy league. If it's going to be a year in which you don't give it to a quarterback, it's going to be a year like this where you've got two great skill players in Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey, even though they'll probably still give it to a quarterback. So those are my thoughts on the MVP race currently in the NFL. There's something else I want to talk about briefly, and that is the college football playoff. They made a decision a couple weeks ago on their last ranking, and I'll pull that up real quick. And you've probably heard of it already. Michigan at number 1, Washington at 2, Texas at 3, and the somewhat controversial Alabama at 4. Those would be the 4 teams in the college football playoffs. Florida State's number 5, and Georgia's 6, and Ohio State's 7. Oregon's 8, even though they weren't really in the conversation after losing to Washington. But those 3 other teams are on the outside looking in. All those other teams are on the outside looking in. And the controversy is around the controversy is around Alabama and Florida State. Who should get in there between those two teams? Alabama certainly has had a great year. They won the SEC. They beat Georgia, the 2-time defending champion. Florida State, however, is 13-0. They went undefeated in a Power 5 conference, as well as beat 2 SEC teams, beat every ranked team they played. It's a compelling argument to put Florida State in. Now, I understand, and I know in my video where I talked about the college football playoffs, kind of my predictions of what things would happen, I thought Georgia would win over Alabama, but I did mention that if Alabama won, Alabama would probably get in, and Georgia might get in as well. I believe that was one of the things I mentioned in that video. You can go watch the video and correct me if I'm wrong on that. But at the time, I didn't even really consider the implications of if other games, what it would look like if things happen differently. If Florida State ends up beating Louisville, they're undefeated, 13-0, from a Power 5 conference, which every time a Power 5 conference has gone undefeated, every time a champion of a Power 5 conference has gone undefeated, they've made the college football playoff. And I also failed to realize or look more closely that if Texas won, meaning that they won their conference championship, they've already beat Alabama. You kind of got to take them as well into the college football playoff. So I just didn't really consider those possibilities of happening. I just assumed that it would kind of be the teams already of Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State. I just kind of assumed that the top 4 would stay the same. But with Georgia losing to Alabama, it causes kind of a wrench thrown into it all. So this is my thoughts on it. Florida State got snubbed. They just outright got snubbed. They should be in over Alabama. Like I said, every Power 5 team to go undefeated in the college football playoff era has made the college football playoffs. So I think it's a bad precedent. It's not good, especially for the last year of this. Alabama lost to Texas, who's in Alabama. That's a great win for Texas. I don't believe in this concept that other people have of it's a quality loss. There is no such thing as a quality loss. You lose, it's a loss. Sorry. A little parched. A loss is a loss. And I think that should hurt Alabama a bit, and obviously you got to take Texas over Alabama. Michigan and Washington are undefeated. They've won. They've both had great years. You got to have them in. So you got to take Texas over Alabama. So it comes down to between Alabama and Florida State. Florida State went undefeated. They went 13-0. and I'll bring up their wins. First game of the year, they beat LSU 45-24. At the time, LSU was ranked 5th in the nation based off AP. They blew out Southern Miss. They beat Boston College, which was a close game. So they barely snuck past a bad team. They beat Clemson, who ended up in the top 25. And they ended up having a decent year, but still a down year for Clemson, but it's still Clemson. They beat Virginia Tech handily. They killed Syracuse. They beat Duke, who was ranked top 25 at the time, 16 in the nation. They beat Wake Forest badly. They played kind of a close game with Pitt, who's not very good. But they did beat them 24-7. They beat Miami, an in-state rival, and at the time, Miami was 6-3, so they were still somewhat decent at the time. They beat North Alabama. They beat other in-state rival and SEC foe Florida. Then they beat top 15 ranked Louisville, who had only had 2 losses previously in the ACC title game, 16-6 on their third-string quarterback. Florida State being on their third-string quarterback. So they went undefeated 13-0. They should have gotten it. And now if I can pull it up real quickly. This was a meme that was on Instagram that I saw. It said Florida State isn't that great. They pulled away late from a 6-6 group of 5 team. They needed a prayer to beat a 6-6 rival. They had a 3-point win versus a 4-8 conference foe, and they lost by 10 at home. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. That's Alabama. And to me, that's a great point and very hilarious when I saw it because Alabama beat Southern Florida 17-3. Not another team playing in their same conference in the SEC. Not a bad SEC team. Southern Florida. They beat them 17-3. Sorry, I had my alarm go off there. They needed a miracle to beat Auburn on the road in Auburn. And Auburn's bad. They barely beat Arkansas, who's bad. And they lost by 10 at home to Texas, who is a top 4 team. Now, still, it's a top 4 team, but it's still a loss at home by 10 points. Florida State didn't lose a game, and they're a Power 5. So I think Florida State got snubbed. Now, I understand the arguments. They're the SEC, but you can't just simply go out. And this is the issue with the College Football Playoff Committee. It's based on bias. It's just bias is what it is. They're the SEC, they're Alabama, and they get the benefit of the doubt. All it is bias. And as my dad said, if it was UK that beat Georgia in the SEC title game, Florida State still had that same record. Who do you think they take, Florida State or UK? They take Florida State. It's because of who Alabama is. It's reputation. They get the benefit of the doubt. If it was Arkansas that beat Georgia, they're not taking Arkansas. If it was UK that beat Georgia, they're not taking UK. It's because it's Alabama. Let's be fair. That's why they did it. It's just bias. It's the issue with the committee. Now, things will get better next year with a 12-team playoff. But I have seen people misunderstanding the playoffs. I had to look it up as well because I didn't know how they were going to do it. I was just curious, so I looked it up. So next year, it's going to be, you have your 12, it's a 12-team playoff. It's going to have 6 conference winners as automatic qualifiers. So the top 6 ranked conference winners and 6 at-large teams. So it won't be the top 12 highest ranked teams. It's going to be the 6 highest ranked conference winners and 6 at-large teams. And the committee is going to rank them however they want. And people and this is why I think it's naive to say, well, all of this next year is not going to matter on who they pick and put in. Yes, it will, because where these teams are ranked is going to determine seeding. And in the first round, teams are going to have home playoff games in college football, just like FCS, Division II, Division III, which is going to be very lit. Can you imagine a home playoff game for Ohio State, Michigan, or at Alabama? Those would be amazing for those crowds, for those fans, and for college football itself. But I bring this up to say that we're still going to have controversy on the large teams put in, because you're going to have to take 6 conference winners, and there's going to be a lot of complaint of, well, next year when they take James Madison and Liberty in, like, that's unfair that they take, but it's they get the automatic bid from the conference, which means one of these teams that's around ranked 10th in the nation that you're like, oh, they're going to get in. They're not going to get in, and there's going to be controversy of, do they take them or the team at 9? How do their resumes stack up? They're both 10-2 on the year. Like, who do they take? There's still going to be controversy. It's the same thing. Like, look at the NCAA men's and women's basketball tournaments. Every year there are teams that are very deserving to get in from a mid-major conference that get snubbed for a team from a bigger conference. And every year there's controversy around of, how can they take this team when they should have taken this team? So there's always going to be controversy. I don't want to hear that, oh, this won't matter next year. Yeah, it will. It'll matter to those fans. It'll matter to those schools and to those players. It will matter. It will still matter. Now, I think a better way to do this, because I think this thing's majorly messed up. College football playoffs have always been messed up. The fact that it's not every conference gets a team in is unfair. FCS does it. Division II, Division III does it. Every other sport in the NCAA does it. But FBS college football is playoffs. Out of 130 teams is decided amongst 4 teams. And next year it'll be decided by 12, so it'll be slightly better. But not every conference has a way into the playoffs. And you might say, well, Will, do you really think Western Kentucky deserves, if they won the Conference USA, that they deserve to play a team like Alabama? You're darn right I do. And the reason is because we do it in every other sport. It's fairness. And even if they get killed by Alabama or Notre Dame or Texas or whoever they play, any of these group of 5 schools, at least they got to say, hey, we had our chance to prove that whether we were good or not against the big boys. And you get to do it in every other sport. Every other sport has an actual playoff system where you can qualify by winning your conference champion. Here's how I would do it, and I think this would fix this would fix playoffs for college football. Sorry, my words are getting all tongue twisted today. You do a 16-team playoff. They're going to 12 next year, so don't complain about this. There's just 4 more teams. It's not a big deal. You take the 9 conference winners, because next year there's only going to be 9 conferences with the Pac-12 dissolving. You take the 9 conference winners plus 7 at-large teams, and you rank them however you want. And there you go. You have some kind of committee, rank them however. And there you go. It's fair. And I think it does a few things. It gives every conference a way in, so every team in the nation has a shot to play for the national title. So and people will say, well, it's just going to water it down the more teams you add in, and it won't matter much about the record. Oh, yes, it will, because those teams in those smaller conferences, they're going to want to win every game, so they guarantee they can win their conference and get in. And in the big schools, they want to win every game so they can get ranked higher. And so they can guarantee to get in if they don't win the conference, so they have a good chance at large. So I think it's not going to water down enough that the undefeated records and whatnot don't matter, because they still will. And it's going to add more interest by all of these other teams having a shot to make the playoffs. Could you imagine, like, Southern Florida or Western Kentucky, Liberty, Cincinnati, Boise State, all of these different schools playing for a chance to make the college football playoffs, to represent not only their school but their conference, and a chance for the national title game? In football, sure, most of these schools will get killed. Most of these smaller schools will get killed by the big schools, but at least they get their chance. And what's the deal? What's the harm in giving them their shot? Are you afraid that they're going to knock off Alabama? Are you Alabama or SEC fans just shaking in your boots that what you might have to play Western Kentucky? It's not that big a deal. It's an extra game, and Guess what? The FCS does this. Division 2 and Division 3 does this. Every other level of football, I think even NAIA does this. They all have like 32 team playoffs. 16 team playoffs not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal to take every conference winner. It's fair. It's what's right for the game. It'd add more interest, more intrigue, make a lot of more people watch the conference championship games. It would get away with some of the random bowl games, and also be far better for these other teams to have something to play for late in the season, and actually have legitimate games to play after their conference championship than playing in some meaningless bowl game no one's going to watch and where half their team just sets out. Where instead, these other conference champions get to play for the national title and have actually something to play for their season, than rather than playing in the, I don't know, Liberty Bowl game, the Music City Bowl game. Like, and I'm not trying to knock on these bowl games, but there's like 60 bowl games. That probably not. I think it's like 30. It's too many bowl games, and most of them are meaningless. A bunch of players sit out anyway. I think this would partly fix some of that if you had more teams in the playoffs. I think eventually we will get to a 16 team. What? Sorry. I think we eventually will get a 16 team playoff. Hopefully sooner rather than later, but I think it'll be a few years, unfortunately. That's all I've got for this video. I gotta go get a glass of water. My throat's a little parched. That's all I got for this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments below about college football playoff. Did Florida State get snubbed? Who's your favorite for the MVP in the NFL? What do you think about the Shohei Ohtani deal? What's up with the MLS Cup? Just let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.